State Senator Valarie Hodges of Louisiana has written a stupid bill, and that annoys me. So in response, I will spend the next X minutes ripping her and it apart. You may think this is childish, and I'll counter with this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. If you copy-pasted a Facebook rant about protests against Israel on college campuses into ChatGPT and said, "Give me a law that bans these protests," this would be the result. I'm not kidding, during a hearing on the bill, she went hog wild with, "Kids these days need to stop protesting and start studying."
Just what we need on college campuses is education, not activists. We need students and not activists.
"We don't want activists," said the Republican business owner and state legislator. None of those three groups are looking for you to form your own opinions in college. They want skilled workers to fill a slot in the workforce so they can all make more money. Honestly, the scene when Roddy Piper puts on the sunglasses in John Carpenter's They Live was more subtle. Consume! Actually, she went a bit further in this vein. When Hodges was explaining the problems with protests on campus, she dropped a hint of her true concerns.
Where across the entire nation, they're canceling classes that people have paid tens of thousands of dollars to send their students.
Oh, won't someone think of the money? Tens of thousands of dollars are at stake. A more Republican sentence I don't think I've ever heard. Anyway, the bill in question, SB 294, is to ban college protests against Israel. The goal is accomplished by two provisos in the bill. The first says if foreign terrorists are involved, it's not protected by the First Amendment. The second says that if it's criminal, it's not a First Amendment activity and is not protected. If something is not covered by the First Amendment on a college campus, it can be evicted immediately or not grant a permit for protest. It has a lot less rights. Let's tackle the terrorist part of this law first. Hodges thinks that protests on campus are pro-terrorist, specifically Hamas.
If there's a protest that is pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, and I have a list of the terrorist organizations, if they are supporting, and that's prohibited.
In addition to saying this many times, she's posted about it on her Facebook feed, which, yeah, that sounds about right. Now, this is stupid for many reasons, but let's focus on the part where the bill says activities can't be funded or organized by a terrorist group. It's a bit longer than that, but that's the Cliff Notes version. There's a big problem with this concept, though. Are there any protests being organized by Hamas? Is there an official Hamas protest parade somewhere that I've missed in the news? Related, is there a Hamas grant program for these protests? Am I missing something here? Because if there isn't some sort of connection between Hamas and the protests, this section is worthless. It only applies if some sort of direction or material aid is being sent to the protesters from the terrorist group. And I haven't seen Hodges present any evidence that this is what is happening. I think the reason she included this foreign terrorist organizations thing in her bill is purely for innuendo purposes. She wants to say she is passing a bill against Hamas protests, so look out college campuses. It purposefully paints the protesters as terrorist sympathizers. It's slimy as hell, but what were you expecting from Senator Hodges? Good faith? You also may be wondering, hey, isn't some of the stuff she's describing here already illegal? Like, if someone commits a crime, shouldn't they just be arrested? Why are you worrying about whether they get a permit for a protest? Like, if someone commits a crime, shouldn't they just be arrested? If someone works with a foreign terrorist organization, isn't that already illegal? Were we waiting for some obscure state senator to pass a bill against it? And the answer is yes. Yes, it was already illegal. And coincidentally, this feeds into the other proviso of Hodges' bill. If something is illegal, it's not protected by the First Amendment. Someone brings this up during the floor debate over the bill.
Why do we need a bill to further clarify a right that we already have?
Well, that right is to free speech is not for criminal activity.
Well, okay, so it's my understanding that if it's criminal activity, then it's already criminal activity. Why do we need a bill saying that something is or isn't criminal activity if we already have laws that define what criminal activity are?
Why do we need a bill to make criminal activity illegal? Such a good question. I'll give you your answer, but be warned, it's very stupid.
Well, we're defining it so that the college campuses across Louisiana can make a policy to let students know. And then what they can do is not issue that permit. If there is a protest that is pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, and I have a list of the terrorist organizations, if they are supporting, and that's prohibited.
Why would colleges issue permits if someone was committing a crime? Wouldn't they just call the cops? What's going on here? Actually, this question has come up before, on her Facebook page. On her Facebook page, one of her constituents asked the very reasonable, "Isn't this already illegal?" Actually, a few asked her that question. Except, whoops, I lied. That question wasn't about this bill. It was about an election fraud bill, where she got asked, isn't this illegal already? So if you're wondering, introducing bills that make things that are already illegal double illegal is something she does, and afterwards brags about passing laws making them illegal again. What a doofus. Back to the bill itself, this bill modifies an existing Louisiana law, this one on screen now. It was passed in 2018 with the backing of conservative Republicans. And you may be thinking, wow, Republicans backing free speech? 28 must have been such a different time. And it was. And Hodges was in the legislature at that point, but was not a sponsor on this bill. She was dealing with other things at the time, like trying to defund the Superdome because a member of the Saints took a knee. Hashtag free speech. Anyway, here's the sponsor of the bill explaining why he sponsored it.
You know, one of our most important rights as citizens of not only the state of Louisiana but the United States is our First Amendment rights and our ability to express our viewpoints and our beliefs. And what we're seeking to do here is to make sure that students on college campuses, on public college campuses, have that ability, and they're not limited to certain zones, that they don't have to go and get permission every time they would like to address certain beliefs.
Isn't that nice? He didn't want students to have to go get permission every time they wanted to use the right to free speech. I appreciate that conservatives are trying to make our college campuses safe for free speech. I wonder what prompted Louisiana Republicans to take this altruistic step. It's not like them to freely defend free speech when talking about something other than race science. Perhaps the student protester they brought with them will shed some light on the subject. I wonder what they were protesting when the trouble happened.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today concerning Senate Bill 364. My name is Ellen Whitman, and I am a student at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Today, I am here to testify on behalf of all students nationwide who believe in and support the First Amendment right to free speech, and on behalf of those who believe in preserving college campuses as marketplaces of ideas. As a student leader at Miami University, I have personally had my freedom of speech violated by my administration. Last semester, my Students for Life group and I sought to put up a pro-life display on the main public quad of campus.
Alright, so it's exactly what everyone guessed from the jump. Republicans changed the law when pro-lifers were in danger. But when pro-Palestinian groups started protesting, all of a sudden it's we got too much free speech on campus. Also, it's not particularly important or relevant, but that was Ellen Whitman, who goes by Ellen Keenan these days. She was the pro-life president at Miami of Ohio that prompted this law, and she currently works for the super conservative Heritage Foundation. I always find the pipeline from conservative college activist to think tank employee interesting. And I was going to cut the video here, but something wacky happened at the 2018 hearing that I couldn't forgive myself if I didn't show you. You see, one of the Republicans on the committee had something deep in his heart he had to get out about protests from the 70s.
I want to be very careful how I ask this question, but because I can recall my time when I was at LSU as a student, one of the hot button issues of the day at that time, it was when the Shah of Iran was still the head of government in Iran. I happened to be an LSU ROTC student at the time that led to my commissioning in the United States Army. And it was deeply offensive for me when the Iranian students were on campus at that time, were criticizing the United States government's support of the Shah in Iran. And, whether or not you agree with the support thereof, I can tell you at the time it was deeply offensive to me.
That's a treasure. I got so mad when they protested the Shah. He was such a good ally. Do you think he gets angry when people protest MBS or Saudi Arabia? Anyway, that was Valarie Hodges, state senator from Louisiana. She couldn't figure out a way to actually restrict protests at college campuses, so she just passed a law re-outlawing things that were already illegal. She also had things in the bill, like you couldn't give a student an F for being a conservative, and students have a right to a lawyer if they can afford one. But I can only handle so much stupid at one time. Besides, I gave you that crazy guy ranting about Iran. What more do you want? I'm History Sock, and I'll see you at the next committee hearing.